So the next type of wait that I wanted to show you guys is known as a fluent wait, but it's known as a fluent wait in Java. And the reason that it's known as a fluent wait in Java is actually because the WebDriver wait class inherits from the fluent wait class in Java. However, if we look at our WebDriver wait class, and I navigate to the definition here, we can see that our WebDriver wait class inherits from the default wait class. Therefore, the WebDriver wait is the child of the default wait parent. And so for us with the C# bindings, our fluent wait is going to be known as a default wait. I just wanted to make you guys aware of that because whenever you look on the web and you see people talking about the fluent wait, in Java, you know that it's equivalent to a default wait in the C# bindings. So, what is this default wait? Well, if we navigate to the definition and take a look, we see that there are two different constructors for the default wait. There is a property called message, polling interval, and timeout. And then there are some methods that allow us to ignore exception types, do the polling, and throw timeout exception. So the advantage of using a default wait is that it allows us to more closely define things such as the timeout and how long our timeout is going to be. It allows us to define a message that is thrown when an exception occurs. It allows us to define the polling interval, and it even allows us to ignore exception types. We not only will ignore the no such element exception, which is ignored by the WebDriver wait automatically, we can ignore other exception types if we desire to do so. Also, you can kind of see it's pretty readable to use this kind of thing. So people like to use the default wait because it's also kind of readable and allows you to very easily define the implementation of the wait class. So take a look at what I did here. I created my WebDriver wait using the default wait class, and the default wait class, of course, returns the default wait class. And so once that's done, we define the timeout, we define the message, we define the polling interval, and we define which type of exceptions to ignore. Then we do our standard stopwatch interval, and we wait until the element is visible. One thing that I wanted to point you guys to is the until implementation. If you guys take a look, the until implementation actually comes from the default wait class. It does not come from the WebDriver wait class. If you look at the WebDriver wait class and look at its definition, you can see that it's very thin, a very small, nice class, and it has two constructors that you guys already know about. It does not have the until method. The until method actually belongs to a parent, the default wait. The default wait right here. And so when we do the expected conditions, it's actually a delegate definition that tells the Selenium WebDriver bindings to do something. So that's how actually that was working, is if I hover over this element as visible, you guys can see that it's a delegate, exactly what the until method expects from the default wait class. Okay, so we can run this, and what I did was I defined a constant string variable here, IDs, and then I made it a bad ID. Just to make that even more clear, I made that a fake ID that does not exist, just so you guys can see what happens when I run this test. So let me go ahead and run it. And of course it should fail because that fake element doesn't exist, right? The ID of that element is not there on the DOM. So if I look in here, you guys can see my message, and it says here timed out after 10 seconds, and then look at our exception message. It says, dude, where's my element? And then the rest of the details for the exception. So you guys can see that we basically defined how our wait is going to behave with these conditions. Now, I told you guys the advantages and that it allows you to very granularly define all of these properties for the weight class. However, it's not very common that people use these. QA engineers don't use these default weight classes very commonly. And I actually want to show you guys the reason why. So let me ask you guys this. If I comment that out and I comment this out, I would like for you to tell me if you were using the WebDriver weight class and you wanted to define this same exact behavior that's represented here by the default weight class, how would you do that? What would you do with the WebDriver weight class, and what code would you write to repeat this functionality here? So take a second to think about it, and when you come back, I'll give you the answer.